Welcome back, everyone, to the Future of Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Ellis, Hammond. Today's guest is Renji Bijoy. He is the founder of Immersed, which is a tech company that's partnered with some of the biggest companies like Facebook to build virtual real estate offices. Man, you are going to love this show. He's raised more than $12 million to date. He is 2021's Forbes 30 under 30, and for good reason. After you listen to this show, he shared with me today that his company is the most used virtual reality app for office space in the metaverse. We talk about why his mission, or what he's, they're moving from offices to now becoming the largest, or goal is become the largest economy in the metaverse. And if that just even piques your interest, how do you have an economy in the metaverse? You're going to learn about that today. We're also going to be talking about he's building the next Manhattan in the metaverse and how you personally can own a piece of Manhattan in the metaverse and begin to build wealth through virtual real estate. Renji, welcome to the Future Real Estate Show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, real quick. So you're recording this on YouTube. I can see your video. You have Ready Player 2 as one of your books. By the way, if people don't know you, you have the #1 virtual reality app for Oculus users. I mean, explain that, who you are a little bit, so folks know who we're talking to. I mean, this is a big deal, guys.
So it's funny that you noticed that book. I'm Renji, the founder of Immersed. We're the most consistently used VR app in the Oculus store. There are a lot of games that get a lot of high volume user usage, but for us, we're not clocking millions of users using our app 5 minutes a day. We're getting a smaller amount of users, but who are working in VR full time, 40 to 50 hours a week, week to week. Time Magazine wrote an article on it. The New Yorker wrote an article on it. And so, even as we meet with Facebook or Meta probably 5 or 6 times a month. And they even told us that there's not even a close second place in regards to user usage. And so obviously they're trying to figure out how do they kind of recreate their version of it or whatever, but we're going to be sort of a hardware agnostic solution for virtual teams or remote teams who want to be able to get into the same VR office together. And so what we've realized though is because we're clocking such high amounts of user usage or hours per week, we realized we sort of laid the groundwork to become the world's first Metaverse economy. And so I was sharing with Ellis earlier here that immersed users not only want to work in VR, but they want to be able to create businesses in the metaverse or provide jobs in the metaverse or transact goods and services in the metaverse. As the limit approaches infinity, or as time progresses, people are going to ultimately be able to virtualize their businesses. They're going to be able to essentially partake in all the sort of business activities they do in the real world, but do that in the metaverse in a much more convenient way, right? So we're not trying to replace the real world. We're just creating much more convenient versions of what exists in the real world, such as if you have a flight to Beijing or something for a business deal, well, you could just put on a headset real quick and you'll be there. And so there's multiple use cases of that today.
Yeah. So, okay. You say we'll be there, but the best let me play devil's advocate a little bit, because I want to go to that book you have on your shelf right there. And I want to know how it influenced you. When you say we'll be there, right now I've seen EXP. I mean, I think a lot of some of our audience might be familiar with that model where you got these little digital icons and you're walking around as that. That's not really being there. So describe to me what you mean by being there.
Yeah. So a couple of things. People don't realize this, but photorealistic avatars, if you go to YouTube and type in Oculus face tracking, you'll see that people don't realize this. There's a prototype video from 2 years ago where it actually has cameras on the headset that are pointed inward and actually tracks your facial muscles and 3D reconstructs your face. So it's actually it's literally indistinguishable from real life. When you're a cartoon avatar in the metaverse and there's someone who's too close to you, you feel kind of awkward, even though they're a cartoon, let alone when they release photorealistic avatars, it's going to feel literally the same. Obviously you can't share a meal with them, but you literally feel like you're with them side by side. So
that hasn't been released yet, though, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah. So the hardware is going to be released in the next year, but the actual software for photorealistic avatars, that's not a prototype. That's something that is productized, and that is something that will be available in the next coming year.
That's crazy. Yeah. So you read that book, Ready Player 2, guys. It's my favorite series, man. Ready Player 1, Ready Player 2. I love this series. So you've listened to it, clearly you've read the book. How much has that inspired you? How much do you think that narrative is
influencing
somewhat true, like, you know what I mean, like it's coming to life. I'm just really,
Well,
just because I love the book so much, I'd love to chat with you on it.
I feel like it's a little more gamified than I think the real world will be, and I think it kind of plays a little bit more of a replacement for the real world than I think there will be. So I think that it'll be the metaverse will actually be more complementary to the real world than we think it'll be. Meaning, a lot of people that when they think about the metaverse, they think of Second Life or they think of Sims or something, right? Where you just have an immersive version of Sims and you're living your escapist dystopian life, right? But the way that technology, think about the internet, think about Airbnb, Uber, all these other sort of applications that kind of live or exist in a digital world, or even Instagram or WhatsApp or Facebook. All of those elements exist in such a way where it has direct implications on the real world. So when I use Facebook and I unfriend someone, in the real world, there's drama now, right? when you think about Airbnb and I book an Airbnb, in the real world, I'm going to go sleep somewhere. If I hail an Uber in the real world, I'm going to be hopping into a car. And so when you think about the metaverse, it does bring more elements of the real world into a virtual world where you're able to see another person who's not physically there. But when you do see them in the real world, there are implications on your interactions in the metaverse that will have implications in the real world. And so likewise, when I think about even just people being able to work in the metaverse, which they do in our application today, the way it works is you have your headset, the Oculus Quest 2, you'll pair it to your MacBook or Linux computer or PC or whatever. It'll spawn or create 5 screens, which are virtual, and you could grab your laptop and your headset and go to your couch or your porch, or you could be on an airplane. Instead of staring at the backs of everyone's heads on the airplane, you could have your headset on and be in a completely different environment with 5 screens. You could be hyper focused, and that has direct implications on your productivity, right? So you're not just doing some sort of like you're not working for no reason in the metaverse. You're not just doing some weird simulation. You're quite literally working in order to do your actual day job that has implications on the real world. So I have a much more complementary viewpoint of the metaverse to the real world than Ready Player One kind of lends itself to kind of help you envision. The Ready Player One world, or at least when you watch the movie, for example, they show people living in the stacks. They show people playing games all day. People are making actual they're earning actual coin, which likely will be a cryptocurrency that they could purchase different objects like the X1 suit or whatever in the movie where he has real world pickup and things like that. And so all I have to say, like, the world moving forward needs to function in the real world, and like there needs to be things that continue working in the real world as it does today. When it comes to the metaverse, if the only way, if the easiest way to make money is to play games, which kind of in the movie seemed more like gambling more than anything, as far as just like you could lose all of your money in 2 seconds, that doesn't seem like a viable economy. And so there are going to be people who have a source of income that's not going to be just by playing games, but instead they're going to have a source of income that's going to be related to something that's very practical and needed in the real world or needed in the metaverse. And so I feel like those worlds are going to be very kind of intertwined a lot more than we think it is, or that the movie kind of shows. All that to say, yeah, I think when people think about the metaverse, they're afraid of it because they almost don't want to live in that world. They think about like, VR surfing, and it's like, dude, go surf in the real world. Like the metaverse it's I think it's healthier to have a perspective of a metaverse where the inconvenient things of the real world become more convenient in the metaverse. And then the leisurely, luxurious, chill things in the real world, you just enjoy those things in the real world, right? So, and eventually someday we're going to have Neuralink that plugs a computer straight to your brain, and you obviously it'll take over your other senses like your feel and your smell and your taste and things like that. But yeah,
you say that in seriousness, or are you kind of half joking, half serious?
Well, so I mean, Elon Musk is working on it, or he's funding it. That is something that I don't think it'll happen in the next 100 years. I think, well, it'll probably be 100 years. Like, I don't think that that's something that is going to happen in the next 20 years, like Elon Musk is making it sound like. But Neuralink that's the next evolution after AR VR is Neuralink.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, he is working. I mean, Neuralink is a real company.
Yeah,
it's kind of working on helping with.
Well, there is a demo you could look up online where there's like literally a monkey that is it's playing this game on a TV screen, and instead of using a controller, it's just using its brain. It's just like looking at it, and it's controlling the controller or whatever on the screen with its eyes, and so or with its brain. And so, like, at the end of the day, they were able to figure out a way to get information read out of a monkey's brain. And also they could write to the monkey's brain too. So it's kind of a two-way connection to like a stupid, simple game. But at the end of the day, though, like, life is much more complex than that, than just like a little Pong game going back and forth. Life has color, taste, touch, sight, like so many different things that we'd have to introduce. So before we get to the Matrix, you and I probably won't be on the face of the planet anymore.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of crazy though, man. Like from, you and I both are men of faith. Like, I mean, to think about just how young civilization really is, though, to think like, man, there is however long we get, like how much is going to be developed and grown, even beyond what you and I are going to
yeah,
see. It really is. It's kind of fascinating, isn't it?
yeah,
To think
yeah,
about
I'm
all
sure it
that's
is.
going to happen.
Yeah, and when I think about us building this metaverse, like I see it as me laying a groundwork for whatever future generations. Obviously, I want to put as many guardrails in place to make sure, because it could go a million different ways, and the vast majority of content out there is more dystopian. It's because human nature, to be real, is depraved. There isn't goodness in humans in and of themselves. And when everyone thinks about kind of their history, they're not like they don't know. Very few people believe they lived life perfectly. The question is, do we believe that human systems thus far have created a perfect system? That doesn't exist on any country on this planet. So when we think about setting up a metaverse moving forward, it's like, obviously we can't put a perfect system in place, and no matter what, it's going to take a lot of people's efforts and minds to be put together in order to try to create the best of all systems that we can come up with, but it's still going to be an imperfect system. And I guess I want to minimize the amount of error or the amount of risk that can be introduced when you're creating a whole new virtual world. So
Yeah. So I want to let's kind of take this in phases, right? So we're talking about I want to get to this idea of buying real estate in the metaverse and how you see this economy growing. But why don't we start with what's already happening? You say you guys are the number one virtual reality app for office space, VR office. Like, let's start there so people have a context of when you say people are going to the metaverse for spending 40 hours a week office work,
yeah.
like paint that picture. Like, what do activities like that look like?
Yeah.
And
So
who is that?
yeah. So for example, so the most common type of user we have is software engineers. Like 29% of our users are coders. And so what they'll do is they'll say they code on a MacBook, they'll pair their MacBook to their headset, and instead of plugging into their multiple external monitors on their desk, they'll instead have the flexibility to take their headset and their laptop wherever they want to go, on their couch or wherever they go, and have 5 virtual screens. And so they're just there doing their day job and they're coding. But as soon as they need to collaborate with their coworker who is working remotely, their coworker can beam into their space. They can share 1 or 5 screens, as many as they want. They can whiteboard together and VR together. And so we're kind of recreating the in-person collaborative office experience for teams that are remote and distributed, or even teams that are hybrid, right? So say, for example, if you have 3 people who are in the office, but 4 people working from home, how do you create an experience where all 7 of them are in the same conference room and feel like they're actually collaborating together? Because at the end of the day, having calls on Zoom or messaging via chat, it's just not the same as having all your minds together in a conference room, whiteboarding, coding together, et cetera. So that we have designers who do the same. We have legal teams, finance teams, day traders, teachers, students.
I can see that for sure. Real estate companies, I mean, this creates an opportunity, which, by the way, I appreciate you sharing that kind of detail because, it's like there are some things that you just kind of need to be together. It's like we're kind of looking for that right now from our real estate company. And I think about that. I'm like, yeah, but if everyone had the headset, they're looking at the whiteboard, you felt like you're in a room together, that kind of accomplishes the same mission, right? Of what that is now. You can't go and get a coffee together and whatnot. Not yet anyways. But that's where we're at. So that's cool. So then you see, so let's kind of go to the next phase then. So I understand the utility of VR Office right now and how that's applicable. You talk about kind of the vision is to see what you guys are building to be, the largest metaverse economy in the world. What do you define economy for me, and what you mean by that?
Quite literally anyone being able to exchange goods and services, but doing that at scale, right? So having virtual cities where certain virtual businesses exist and people being able to purchase goods, but also sell goods, right? So, but then that existing in multiple cities and that existing in multiple virtual countries or worlds, and that sort of expanding from there. So we don't know that we'll be the world's largest one. We just know that we're the first one because we're the only application that has that much user usage in any metaverse period. Like there's a lot of games out there that are trying to do things like sell virtual land, and they'll have like a cryptocurrency, and that's technically kind of its own sort of small metaverse economy. But they're mainly only like exchanging like Pokemon or exchanging virtual plots of land. And there's not like any actual practical business use cases. Whereas for ours, if, say Lecrae, for example, owns a plot of virtual land in Immersed, and works with a 3D artist to create an awesome concert venue. And then Justin Bieber wants to do a metaverse concert. Well, Justin Bieber can then pay Lecrae to rent out his virtual concert hall, and ultimately end up having an awesome show with visual effects that are not bound by the laws of physics. So there's a bunch of different, and that's like one of many use cases, right? That's what virtual concerts look like, but there's also like virtual movie production, right? There's education, there's like the VR office example I gave you. There's calm type applications that people might want to just go to like a very leisurely environment in Hawaii, right? Virtual Hawaii, whatever. So there's so many different types of experiences that people could create in this sort of metaverse, and ultimately charge other users for that. The reason why users would want to pay for it is because, like, so if you're spending 40 to 50 hours a week in VR doing your work, well, you might want to take a 15-minute break to just go to virtual Hawaii and just relax a little bit, decompress, and then get back to your work, beam back to your virtual office and do whatever. Or maybe, Justin Bieber's concert is 30 minutes during lunch. And like, you're just like, I'm just going to go pop in real quick, enjoy the concert, and then I'm going to go back to work. So it's just like a very convenient way of being able to experience certain types of experiences. When it comes to even the virtual office side of things, you're going to want to be located in a virtual city. Like we're actually next week going to be releasing virtual Manhattan, and like the first 360 plots of the 10,000 total plots that will ever exist in virtual Manhattan. And it'll be programmatically limited because it's built on the blockchain. So you cannot create additional clones of it. Like it's going to be served to people in the form of an NFT, so that people cannot clone it, and they have the authentic ownership to each individual plot. And at the end of the day, if, say, for example, they build a co-working space business, right, where they own 3 plots of land, and they are able to create really cool, chill co-working spaces. Because again, people are working in Immersed 40, 50 hours a week, and they want a change of scenery. Immersed is only able to push out one environment every 2 months, if that, because it just takes forever to build it. But if we allow users to work with their own contractors at scale, and there's a bunch of different types of environments, well, if I own 3 co-working spaces and each one's an awesome experience, and only 100 users visit it per day, well, say I charge each user only $3 at the door, right, for virtual coffee or whatever. Well, I just made $300 per co-working space, and say I have 3 of them. I just made $900 that day times 30 days a month. That's $27,000 a month that I just made by creating a virtual business. So that's one of many. At this point, I think it's just like, it's very obvious that virtualizing businesses, it's very similar to the parallel of back in the early days of Facebook, right? They had to stand up their own servers. They had to have their own server racks and all of that. But then eventually Amazon Web Services came up with this thing called EC2, where you could just spin up a server instance real quick. And so now when you want to create an app, you don't have to worry about the servers that are supporting the app. You just upload an app to the internet, and you have servers that are running on its own because it's powered by Amazon. And so likewise, Immerse is going to be kind of a way to very quickly spin up a business. If it works, great. And maybe you could sell it, or you could just hold on to it if it's making awesome passive revenue. But at the end of the day, you have the choice to be able to spin up a quick business without having all of the risk and overhead that I had to have when I started my business, right? So,
right. Well, I think what you're proving first is that, and this is why I think it was good for you to tell us kind of about the office thing, because one, there's no good business without demand, right? So it's like, oh, there's this idea of the metaverse, and it's like, well, who's going to go live in that or whatever? You're saying, no, people are literally working there every day. They're spending 40 hours a week in the metaverse. It's like, this is not future anymore, right? And I think that's probably hard to understand for a lot of folks who maybe don't put on a headset every day, is like, the metaverse is not the future. The metaverse is very applicable to a lot of people. Like how big is this, would you say, right now?
So we've onboarded, we're approaching 500,000 users that have been onboarded to date. So it's starting to really grow, and Oculus has something like 10 to 15 million daily active users. So we barely scraped the surface. Like, we're still working on acquiring more Oculus users. And on top of that, Apple is announcing their headset later this year. So as soon as Apple enters sort of the VR AR space, it's going to become ubiquitous. Because even think about the AirPods, for example, right? Like back in 2017, when they released the AirPods, in-ear Bluetooth earphones were not a new thing. Bose had them, Samsung had them, and Apple back then was only an $800 billion company. But as soon as they came out with these AirPods, they were able to make more revenue than like Netflix, Shopify, Spotify, all these companies combined, just from the one revenue stream of AirPods. So fast forward to today, now Apple's a $3 trillion company with way more reach. If they come out with these super sleek, thin VR headsets, which has the new MacBook M1 chip in it, it's going to be 20 times as powerful as the Oculus Quest headset, and it's going to be much higher quality, and it looks a lot nicer, and it's Apple, right? Like, they're gonna have crazy adoption. So
yeah, that's gonna be dope. When's that happening? Yeah, you got the inside scoop, man. When's that coming?
Yeah, well, they're announcing later this year, so that's already public information that they're announcing it later this year. My guess is they're gonna release it probably beginning of next year. People don't realize this is happening like now. It's crazy. Yeah.
All right, so we're real estate investors on this show. Okay, so guide us, like be our guide to, you know, I love, like, go down that route with me a little bit more. So talk to us, break down the process about investing, you know, in your company, or kind of leveraging what you're building to be an investor in the metaverse. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So there's two pieces to that. So Immerse has historically taken a lot of venture capital money. We actually opened up a couple of crowdfunding campaigns back in the day. We've raised $12 million to date. We were actually in the process of closing on like a $50 to $70 million round that ended up becoming oversubscribed for $270 million. Wow. I ended up like just pausing on that because I realized the vast majority of the venture capital firms in that round were also wanting to put money into immersed virtual land. So I realized, well, why don't you just only invest in that? We don't get diluted. We don't have to put an unnecessary board in place at the time, just because we're still focusing on product iteration. We're not in a perfect growth stage yet where we have the exact guardrails. We're still building those guardrails. So we just don't want to have a board to distract us. But at the end of the day, like if you're wanting to invest in this metaverse, you could always just own the virtual land. And then if you don't want it anymore, obviously sell it on OpenSea. So all that to say, we've decided to actually pause on the like equity investing side of things, but now there are people who are actually wanting to invest in the virtual land side of things because it's completely liquid, right? You don't have to wait till I exit. And also at the end of the day, you get to do whatever you want with it, right? So you could build on that plot of land, you could lease it out, you could fractionalize and have multiple owners to it. There's a lot of really cool things you could do with it. So there are a lot of different virtual land games out there. But the $270 million worth of VC money that wanted to invest in Immerse, that actually came from a lot of these other VCs who had invested in these gaming metaverses that have virtual land. And they realized, if Immerse comes out with virtual land and that's a practical metaverse, for what reason will our users in these other game metaverses want to keep their money in there? That seems inherently way more risky than if they were to put it into a professional business type practical metaverse virtual land investment. So that being said, that's when they then came to us and said, hey, can we get some money into your company as well? And then I realized, okay, maybe we will just eat you guys lunch. Maybe we will just release virtual land. So what we're doing is next Monday, I'll send the link as well. Next Monday, we're doing kind of a private virtual land sale that we haven't posted online publicly anywhere. It's actually, I sent the link to the 3,500 people who had invested in Immersed's crowdfunding campaigns. So at this point, we have about $2 to $2.5 million-ish dollars worth of people who are trying to invest in the first land drop, because it's only 360 plots. So it's really kind of a bum rush, gold rush sort of thing where people are just like, they'll just take whatever they can get. The plots are going to be between 5K to 15K each. Depending on what's on that land. So the skyscrapers, for example, someday those are gonna be worth millions of dollars. Say, for example, Salesforce wants all of their employees using Immerse in order to work in VR. Well, we're gonna enforce that they actually can collaborate, but they have to collaborate in skyscrapers or whatever sort of land that's available. And so if you're the owner of that skyscraper, you can charge whatever rent you want, or they could just buy the skyscraper from you. But by the time that happens, say 2-3 years from now, that skyscraper is not gonna be worth 15K. It'll likely be worth millions of dollars because that can have 500 units in that skyscraper. So, but then we have kind of smaller, we have mid-rises, we have standard offices or standard buildings. Then we have custom land where you can kind of build things like concert venues, et cetera. And, those kind of smaller ones are like 5K, the larger ones are 10 and 15K, and that actually becomes an auction. And so we're releasing the first 360 plots of the 10,000 of virtual Manhattan next Monday. That'll be a pretty exciting day. But what I'll do is take a lot of the traction we get just from the PR around that first land drop and then funnel it into the second land drop, and that'll be public. The second one, we're going to be releasing some plots around virtual Hawaii, some more plots from virtual Manhattan, and then a third virtual land drop. We're actually going to release some virtual LA as well. So New York is going to be focused on business, like a very, very clear kind of financial type transaction type businesses, or rather what I mean is like kind of very, things that are a lot more practical than Hawaii, where Hawaii might be more calm experiences. Maybe someone wants to build a Jurassic Park in VR sort of experience on their land and be able to charge for it, things like that. Then you'll have virtual LA, where people are going to want to focus on entertainment, right? So virtual movie production, virtual music production, concerts, things like that. So each city will have a different connotation, but at the end of the day, like it's up to the users on what they want to end up using that land for, because they own it. So they can kind of do whatever they want with it. We are going to be pre-building 2/3 of virtual Manhattan to keep somewhat of the integrity of what Manhattan is supposed to feel like. We don't want it to be this kind of ugly, like kind of mix of people's random custom crap. We want it to be still have a New York feel, but we do want there to be collaborative minds, like essentially people who are associated with New York. We want them to be very kind of business minded and then have a lot of kind of knowledge share amongst the business minded people there. Then in LA, we want a lot of entertainment focused people to be able to knowledge share there. So there's a lot of really kind of cool similarities. The reason why we decided to go with somewhat of a mirror of the real world. It's not going to be identical. Like Manhattan's going to look a little bit different. Like the roads are a little bit mixed up intentionally so that real world people cannot sue our users for owning their virtual version of their plot. Because as this metaverse becomes more one-to-one with real life, obviously there's going to be some kind of conflict of interest there. But at the end of the day, like each city is going to be what people make it. And so as we open this up to users, it'll be interesting to see kind of what they end up making. So
yeah, and I'm so glad you're on this show, dude. Like you just make all of this sound really exciting and really fun. So I have so many entrepreneurial ideas right now. So let me ask you a kind of a pushback question, but then I want to get really creative and kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit with you. So you talk about, let's call it 3 years. I buy a virtual Manhattan plot and I get a good, you're going to drop me a good plot. And you talk about the Salesforce thing, but my question is like, what's your barrier of entry? Like Salesforce has enough resources to go build their own virtual Manhattan, right? Why would they come to Immerse? Is it just because number of users and, you're not going to go build another Facebook because you already have this many people on Facebook? I mean, what's the conversation there?
A couple of things. So Salesforce, they could try to create just their own collaboration platform if they want. But at the end of the day, when it comes to them interacting with customers, interacting with the rest of the world, I mean, are you really going to create just kind of your own version of it and try to get your customers in there? It's just not something that's their core competency.
So it's adoption that you're really banking on. Like you got to build the adoption factor so that companies are really drawn there.
And because there isn't a single other application, a VR application in the world that has 40 plus hours a week being used per user, like, and again, that's Facebook has identified that for us. Like, because I meet with them frequently, they're like, they're just not a close second place that even comes close to that amount of time spent in VR. Because people haven't cracked that code. People haven't figured out how the heck do I get people to spend that much time in my app. But Immerse has figured it out by God's grace. So all that to say, like, obviously we're going to be 7 steps ahead and really start laying this infrastructure in place in anticipation for Apple's headset release. And so at the end of the day, like, yeah, we don't want to sit back and just continue doing our VR office thing and just pretend like that's not going to become commoditized. For sure, Apple's going to try to create their own version of multiple displays, and Facebook's going to try their own version. But like, we need to create more than just the core utility, what Immersed is. We want the utility to continue to get better and better and better. But no matter what, like that in and of itself may become commoditized, right? If Apple has native virtual displays on their headset that pairs with their MacBook, well, okay, well then that problem is solved. So what value does Immersed have other than, okay, well, Immersed can do that on multiple different devices. More than that, we want to start kind of giving users the tools to start building their businesses in the metaverse. Because think about, again, the sort of the parallel between the metaverse versus the real world. The way that cities work in the real world today is people move to a city because usually that's where these large businesses are planted or localized. And people will commute to a downtown city center. They'll go into some sort of skyscraper where their company is headquartered. They will pull out their laptop and they will get to work. So the core staples there are they have a laptop, so something that they're productive on. They have a facility that they're productive in with people around them, and they reside in some sort of proximity from that. And so we're kind of just creating the mirror of that because we've created the laptop in VR. Well, now people are able to be productive in VR. The next thing we need to do is now give them the ability to own property or own the ability to have a headquarters in that metaverse. And then from there, people can own custom plots and like reside, quote unquote, in certain areas and just give them the ability to take ownership of these different plots and do what they want with it. But on top of that, like these businesses in the real world, they exchange goods and services with other businesses, or they exchange goods and services with customers. And then they have multiple cities that they're located in. And then they start taking over the world, quote unquote, or at least that's what companies are trying to do. Likewise, in the metaverse, they can own multiple plots. They can exchange goods and services with either users or just other businesses in there. They can be in multiple virtual cities likewise. So because we've created sort of the groundwork for getting people to exist and dwell and benefit from that metaverse, just like the real world, so far, no one's even close to that. And that's why I'm excited to be the first to do it.
So real quick, paint the goods and services picture. You keep saying that. Give me some more examples of what, so people think, okay, yeah, cool, I'm doing office work. But when they you say business exchange goods and services, what do you mean?
So an example would be, like the concert venue example I gave, the co-working example I gave. There are people, for example, another person told me 2 weeks ago, they texted me saying, hey, I'm actually going to quit my real life property management job because I want to be a property manager in the metaverse. They want to educate people on how do they essentially rent out office spaces in the metaverse. There's another person who told me how in the real world, like obviously mortgages exist because people can't afford to just buy property right, flat out cash. And so what he's going to be doing is creating virtual mortgages, right? Like being able to lend people money to be able to afford virtual land as it becomes too expensive. And obviously there's a business there. There's a million ideas.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was thinking. So like, so when you're saying, I get this piece of land, well, I don't know what to do or even who to call. So I'm imagining like a good business idea is like, you're going to need virtual reality general contractors.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot. So an example would be hooking people up with 3D artists or 3D environment artists who know how to create these virtual worlds. So likewise, in the real world, when I buy a plot of land, I'm not going to Home Depot and grabbing a 2x4 and starting hammering on it to build my land. I'm working with contractors. I'm working with architects. Likewise, you need to work with virtual architects, virtual environment artists. And though I'm the person who owns the land, I'm paying them to help develop my land so that I can then do some sort of business on it. One thing that's really cool is Immerse will be holding a conference here in Austin called ImmerseCon, about a 4,000 person conference where we'll be equipping people and teaching them how to build virtual businesses. And this is gonna be a crazy iconic moment in history. And so just a lot of people who are gonna be owning the first instances of virtual land in Immerse. Everyone has a free ticket to ImmerseCon in 2023, February 2023, which I'm really excited for. So we'll be doing a lot of educating. We have a lot of subject matter experts who will be speaking on specific industry verticals that will be existing. So for example, Tadashi will be speaking on communications type businesses like podcasts, blogs, different things like that. And Dominio will be speaking on how do you like virtual movie production, because he loves movies. Lecrae will be talking about virtual concert venues and virtual music production. So we'll have different kind of speakers focused on different aspects. Like there are social media influencers, for example, who want to be able to create a space for them to have more personable experiences with their followers, as opposed to just doing a TikTok live stream or an Instagram live stream, right? They want to do more than just like respond to a comment that's floating up on the screen. They want to be able to sit side by side with their followers in a safe environment. It's pretty mind-blowing type of experiences. So yeah.
How often do you put on a headset a day? Like how much are you like, how do you use it?
Yeah. Well, when I'm not in fundraising season, usually about 25 to 40 hours a week. And my team does the same. So that's another thing. Like we realize is we can't expect people to use an application that we ourselves don't use. So, and what's funny is even the non-coders on our team, literally sitting right out here, if I walk out there, they're probably wearing headsets. They literally feel like if they don't have a headset on, they just feel less productive. Like once you start using the app and you learn how to use it, you start realizing that you're just less productive when you don't have your headset on, because you have your coworkers around you who are kind of distracting. You have multiple screens in the real world that you cannot physically move or make as nearly ergonomic as you can in the virtual world. In the virtual world, you can stretch it out to be a 50-foot screen. You could have 5, 30-foot screens.
So like all my underwriting team, like you're saying, so this is really cool, man. So like I need to get my underwriting team, because instead of having 3 and like that's why we need office space, because like it's hard to underwrite on one monitor, so you definitely need 3 monitors. So instead of having to buy 3 monitors, need the space for 3 monitors, you just click on this headset and now you got as many monitors you need, and you can underwrite that way.
Yep. And also, like for example, exactly. And also coders, for example, we love using vertical monitors because there's just more lines of code that you can read. And so for me, usually whenever I'm coding in VR, I'll have a vertical monitor here that has a code running here. I have the app running here on my horizontal screen, and then I have the console running here as well. So I have multiple screens where I can actually get my work done. And then as soon as I need to pull someone in, they can beam into my space, they can double check my work, and then we're good to go. So there's a lot of cool things you can do in VR because it's all virtual. It's not real. And you don't have to worry about extra equipment costs because, again, it's all virtual. We are having conversations with Amazon around what does it look like to even just virtualize laptops, right? Imagine them streaming 5G LTE from your headset to their virtual machines in the cloud, and then having a virtual laptop. Like that's pretty mind blowing. You start leap stepping companies like Apple, who have to worry about things like prototyping, manufacturing, supply chain, distribution, all those things that they actually have to do for their physical laptop. But instead, what if you had a virtual iPad or a virtual laptop, something that is actually streaming from the cloud as opposed to actually having physical ones? So
yeah, because I mean, right now the headset really is just more of like a monitor. Really, exactly. It's kind of how it's serving.
Yep, exactly.
But you're still having to use physical product like a computer to actually kind of move or do anything in
today's world. Yep. And but 2 years from now, that could be all completely virtual, where you only have the heads, like you only have a pair of glasses, your Apple glasses in your pocket. You pull it out, and now you have all your devices around you, right? Yeah, it can all be virtual.
That's cool. So if people want to get into Immerse, they got to go get a headset, Oculus headset.
Yep.
And then they need to go to your website.
Immerse.com. Yep.
immerse.com. And then how do they get access to, the real estate sales?
Yeah, so you will get access to the first private
Yeah,
one.
don't worry, bro. We gotta stop here. I'm like, give me all of this, but I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
know
yeah.
how people can do it.
So the first one is private, so it's mainly just people who know me. And so
Yeah.
since you reached out, I'll just send you the link. But for the second one onwards, that'll be public. So that'll be on our website. You'll be able to see that, where we'll announce it about a month from this upcoming Monday. So the first week of June 2022, we'll announce kind of the public second virtual land sale onwards. But yeah, the first private one is just you, me, friends, family, and all of us who want in first.
So like, I mean, I know what you have to answer here, but I'm going to ask anyways. And like, I know you'll give me kind of a straightforward. So I've asked this question a lot. We've talked to a lot of people in the metaverse.
Yeah.
Are we too early to really invest in the metaverse? Or do you think now's the real time to start buying land or owning real estate in the metaverse?
I think a good signal, I would say, is Apple. Like they've gotten timing really, like they're known for being late to the game, and they have figured out timing. So because Apple is announcing their headset later this fall, I mean, they're already quote unquote late to the game, but if anything, I think they're right on time, because they are able to get a form factor that is user friendly. A form factor, and that's another thing about Apple. They will not release a product unless they feel like people will adopt it because of how user friendly it is. Right? If it's a bulky block on my head, even like the Oculus headset, it's still kind of like a block on the head. The new headset,
do you have one? Like, do you have it behind you somewhere?
I have the Oculus Quest 2 is here.
Yeah, I need to see it. Like, yeah, show folks what this looks like. Okay, yeah.
It's decently thick. The new Facebook headset, I cannot show you. It's literally sitting right here. I'll show you this. This is the back end of it.
Okay.
I can't show that. I mean, there. If you Google it, you'll see silhouettes online. It's about a third of this thickness.
That's the Facebook one.
Yeah. So yeah, the Oculus. Yeah, Oculus is owned by Facebook. Yeah. So the one that comes after this, it's about a third of the thickness. So
they haven't released it yet, is what you're saying?
No, that's coming out later in the next year. I can't give actual release dates, but what I will say is Apple. I mean, I talked to Facebook about this. Apple is about to release something massive, and Facebook, to be real, like Facebook's like, yeah, we're gonna try our best, and like, because it's Apple, right? Like, how do you beat Apple? And so Facebook, I think longer term does have a dog in the fight. I think this year Apple's going to win it, and next year Apple's going to win it. But yeah, if Apple is in it, that's how you know that now's the time to take this stuff seriously. And not even just like right after. You probably want to do it right before, because 4 or 5 years ago, there was no Apple product in sight in the VR AR space. But the fact that they're announcing theirs later this year, now's the time to get in right before. If you do it right after, then you're just in the hype like everyone else. So you won't be able to profit off of it as much as you could have.
That's cool. Guys, if you're not following Renji, make sure you do so. He's on Instagram. Are you on YouTube? You got yourself on YouTube?
I don't do it. I mean, Immerse has a YouTube channel. Yeah. I do more Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Yeah.
Okay. Such an enjoyable conversation. Seriously, I really appreciated your time. We're going to have to find some more ways to collaborate. So thanks for being a leader in this space, being open about your faith. I respect that a ton, and excited to see what you and your company create, and real leaders in this space, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right.